two-shot. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of the Motion Design Hotline. I'm Evan Abrams, joined usually by Kyle Hamrick, but we have a special guest today. Welcome, Klob Hamross, to the program. Thanks for being with us, Klob.
Yeah, of course. So happy to be here today. Gonna have all kinds of fun.
Yeah, we're going to be doing painting today. I'm going to try to not totally match your energy, but you are really mellowing me out over here. So if we both
That's okay.
if we both do the voice, we're never going to get through these things.
We did decide it probably slows everything down a little bit when you're being this mellow.
Well, and we have people who watch who have low blood pressure already, so we don't want to cause any kind of problems.
Yeah.
So, Klob, what are we doing today? We brought you on to talk about some painting. So we're going to be trying to animate some brush strokes inside of After Effects, but that hasn't been a particularly groovy time for a lot of people. So hopefully you can shed some magic on that.
Yeah, well, I agree that After Effects it's got a brush tool, but I think most of us have used it before and found that maybe it was not quite as exciting as we would hope. So today we're going to show you all kinds of other fun brush techniques to make things that are controllable or realistic or as stylized as you might like. And I think, Evan, this might be a good opportunity for folks to just think about if they have any other After Effects troubles on this topic or any other topic. They should just send them our way because we just love to see your little questions.
Yeah, and we're going to run all of the brushes on the bottom of the screen here. Get out your fan brush and your, I want to say knife, the things that you typically paint with. But yeah, we're going to be jumping into After Effects. We're going to spend some time in Fresco. If you have any problems, let us know in the chat and we'll get to you. We have a link where you can send questions at us. This brush on stuff actually comes from a real question from a real human. So, we're happy to get to it. But I don't know if you don't mind, we'll jump into my screen first and
I don't mind at all.
Okay.
I would love to see your screen, Evan.
Okay, thank you. That's great. This is good and normal. So we're going to, let's just have a look at first the brush tool inside of After Effects. Let's talk about that. Let's get the elephant in the room. Let's put the tiger on the table and yell at it. Although, of course,
right?
Yeah, you are anti-yelling, of course, famously. So here is sort of a result that you can do with this basic brush. The brush tool, which you can activate simply by putting any old type of layer down. So if I just put a new solid out there, let's say we do like a white solid out in the world, and then you come up to the top and you grab your brush up at the top. That's going to seemingly do nothing because until you actually double click on the thing and get into layer mode, you're not going to see it. But now I might as well use my pen tablet over here and actually draw some stuff. You'll notice that sometimes, like I just did, oopsie, I drew something and then it went away. So what's that all about? Well, when you're drawing, you'll have your paint window open over here and it's going to say, what way do you want stuff to come on? So do you want it to be constant? Do you want it to write on? Do you want to do a single frame or something else? And then brush-wise, we don't have a huge selection of possible brushes. This is where things really fall down. They can really only be round
or round. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are the two types. And I'm sure, as you're fond of saying, there are brushes of all kinds of shapes available in the world, and whatever shape of brush you are, that's
just not in After Effects.
Yeah, exactly. Now we can make them angular and stuff. So, for example, these are all vector brushes as well. So you can see I was doing it in a right-on way, and that has start and end keyframes. It has a color. I can actually affect the diameter in post. I can change the angle afterwards. It has some weird corner behavior sometimes. And you can slide these sub-layers around. These are layers within layers, right? And what else we got? We got hardness. We got spacing. So you can actually, it behaves exactly like other brushes. So if you only need to write on stuff with, we'll say, the most basic of brushes, this is what you can do. Even though it is a vector, though, there is no way to really access the points of this path. But with the path selected, I can just redraw, and you can see that it draws a new path, right? Same brush, new path. And with this, I was able to, as you can see, produce a whole series of those keyframed little buddies down here and animate on this, various strokes showing up, which is okay. So I said that's fine, right? If you don't need anything more stylistically interesting than that, then you should be fine to brush with this. But that's not usually what people say when they mean I want to paint things on in After Effects.
Yeah, I
Right?
mean, really, Evan, ultimately using those brushes, in my opinion at least, you're not too far away from if you just made a stroked shape layer or something and used that as your matte or as your shape and maybe
Yeah.
blurred it, right?
And while today we're doing paint on effects, in a couple of weeks we're going to be back on here and we're going to be doing more types of painting on. So this brush tool will get a workout at that point. But for today, I don't know, Kyle. Klob. I think we'll go to your screen and we'll see what kind of let's see what kind of magic that you're working over there. What kind of things have you put into your little world?
Yeah, well, I think usually when people are thinking of using a brush style reveal, they are really looking for that textural quality that a brush gives and that irregularity. And so, really, you're going to have to just use something that's a little more dynamic and interesting. And you've got those in, say, Photoshop, for example. You've got all kinds of brushes in there, but After Effects, it's almost there. If you could get maybe little sprites or something in the brush engine, but it just doesn't have that. So let's look at some ways to take advantage of other things that we can use here. So I went to my favorite little stock site, Adobe Stock, and just looked in the free collection here for brush texture. And wouldn't you know it, I found just the perfect little set of brushes right here. And I will point out that you can download these as JPEGs if you want, but I downloaded this as an AI file because that actually allowed me to make it bigger. The JPEG is actually not very big, so I don't think these would be very useful at all as a JPEG.
Yeah, if you download a .ai file, you can make that as big as you want.
As big as you want. And in fact, in the example I got, I almost feel like it's a little too big because even here you can see that I like that chunkiness, but it's I don't know, it doesn't look as realistic anymore at this scale, but that's okay. We're just talking about the little ideas here. So for this brush reveal, I have these brushes. I already downloaded that file. You can download the exact same file or find your own little file, whatever makes you happy. Make big choices, right? And I think what we want to do here is find one of these that we can use to reveal these text layers. So let's just bring this right on in here. There we go. And I would normally bring this into Photoshop and carve this up into layers in there, but we can do it right in here. Works out just the same. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab my masking tool here, and let's just maybe pick, I don't know, this one, this little fella right here. Yeah, right there. And now that I have that outlined, I'm going to go ahead and hit Control Alt Home, and that centers up the anchor point there in that mask that I just drew. And then I'm going to be wanting to transform this little guy. So how about I go ahead and lock that mask, and now I have the ability to make this much bigger. Oh, but Evan, that's what's happening here. That's looking all gritty and gross. What do I need to do? Maybe just check that little box right there, that little continuous rasterization. Yep. All right. So how about I flip this over and kept my rotate tool a little too long there. So I'm just going to find a good spot where that covers up my word brush, right? And then we will just go ahead and expose our position property. Let's right click and separate those dimensions because we know we love to mess with those curves like we're going to do in a minute. Yeah. And then I'm going to go ahead and just click that little X position right there. Hit home to go back to the beginning, move it off. And it's as simple as that, right? You can do this, just that simple. So now all we have to do is take our little brush word and our old friend track mat right here. If you don't see that, all you have to do click this little thing down here, toggle switches and modes, or you can right click up here, choose your columns, modes right there. Got access to these track mats, these delicious little track mats that just let you do all kinds of stuff. Oh, just left that little pick whip right there. And then you're going to see it disappear. Oh no, where'd it go? Well, of course, it's just waiting for that layer to come right in there and reveal it for you. Looky there. Yeah, right like that. So how about we go ahead and hit F9 to easy ease those. Maybe just ease that a little harder here. Make it feel a little more natural. There we go. Yeah. You know what? I think I'll just take that same brush, use that same thing for the bottom. Open this right up. Move it down. Let's go ahead and flip that over. Create a little bit of variety here. There we go. Move back to the beginning and just scoot it off to the other side. And it's really just that simple. Oh, oh, I accidentally had both keyframes selected, so of course it moved both of them and just didn't quite do what I wanted there. But there we go. Make sure we set up our track mat relationship again. This is just the standard alpha mat right here. It's using the visible portion of that layer to reveal some other layer. Really powerful little trick, and boop, boop, there you go, brush reveal. You know what I really like to do, Evan? I really like to make a little duplicate of all these, move them over a few layers, and then let's go ahead and take these two right here and just, oh, I don't have my libraries open, so I don't have the official Hotline pink, but just something right about like that. Yeah. Now you get this little reveal of one color, reveal of another color. Yeah, looky there. Looky there. Now, of course, this is the simplest method here, but you know, it can be pretty effective when you need it to go quick here. One thing I like to do a lot too, for a background element like this, see, this is just that same kind of brush. I already prepared it the same way. A lot of times I like to take one of these. Let's go ahead and just solo that little fella right there. I might just duplicate it and scale it up just a little bit. And then let's parent this one to the first one. Oh, got a little funny on me there. Here we go. Well, we'll just work with it. That's okay. That's okay. You just let him do whatever he wants to do right there. And let's go ahead and rename this one to Matt, or of course Matthew, if you prefer. Give him whatever little name you like. Open up the position again. And the reason I parented it is so that now I can just use that X position again. And we'll use this brush to reveal itself. Kind of just the same idea here. There we go. And so now you're getting that. Although one thing that can happen here, you'll notice I'm getting a little bit of funny stuff there on the left side of it. And that's one downside of using these brush images, is that when they have these open areas or they have little holes in them like this, you're going to get some movement that's not supernatural sometimes. So I do want to point out just a little tip that you might take when you have something like this. This image right here, I think this would be a good thing to reveal stuff with, but I don't love that it has all these little holes in it right here, and it might be a little short. So just a thing I like to do when I'm using these, let's go ahead and just pre-compose this little friend here. Put him in his own little composition, all by himself. But you know what? He might get lonely if he's in there all by himself. So I'll create some room here, and then let's make him a little friend. Let's go ahead and just Command D to duplicate. Maybe flip this thing around, scoot it over. Now we have a little bit longer brush to deal with. Gives us a little more freedom. But we still have those holes, so I'm just going to make a simple shape layer here, and you can just kind of cover up those holes. You can make this whatever color you want. If you want this to be pink or blue or black, whatever. But remember, we're using this as an alpha mat, so all you have to do is fill it up. And now you have a nice versatile brush. You can make this as long as you want. But I will say that if you need a longer brush, sometimes this one isn't going to be quite as cooperative as you like, and you end up needing to make a very long series of those. So let me take one other opportunity here, show you another technique. And we could certainly use that long brush that I just made on this right here, right? So let's go ahead and just look at that real quick, right? So we could add this on here, and we can do this, but boy, Evan, I don't know about you, but that just doesn't feel right to me. Right? It's not really following the curves. Just feels kind of silly, right?
Yeah,
Let's go ahead.
it's not flowing with the
It's
thing.
not at all. So I tell you what I'm going to do instead is create my own brush. And much as you would like to be able to use that After Effects brush, I just don't think that quite gets the job done here. So what if instead we make a new composition that's long and short, okay? And then we're just going to take our old friend Mr. Solid here, which you can of course get by New Solid, but we all know the hotkey, which is Control or Command Y to create a new solid, of course. So let's go ahead and just do that right there. You'll see in this case, I made one that was just a little bit shorter than the composition. You make it whatever size you like, that's okay. I'm just going to bring this in just a little bit. I want to have just a little bit of room on the edges for this guy right here. And then what we're going to do is get our old friend Roughen Edges, which I believe is under Stylize. Yep, Roughen Edges right there. When you need something to look a little rough around the edges, this is right where you go. So the first thing that I want to point out here is that this is great for kind of eating away the edges of something, and we're going to do that in a minute. But the first thing that we want to do is get this cranked up just a little bit. But we're going to come down to this stretch width or height that I bet most people never use. But if you push that all the way in one direction, look at this, you start getting these long streaks. So let's go ahead, start maybe changing the scale, maybe crank up this border quite a bit here. And look at this, it starts getting a much more interesting feel. There we go. Maybe have our scale somewhere around 70 or so. And now you're starting to get that same kind of natural edges that we were looking at before. You can play with the complexity if you like. You can make it a lot complex, a little simple. Just whatever you want to do out of this here. Let's go ahead and take that edge sharpness up just a bit more as well. And then you know what I'm going to do, Evan? I love Roughen Edges so much, I'm just going to duplicate that, have another one. Let's go ahead and reset that. And hey, look at this. Already, even just at the default settings, we're getting kind of this nice, very paintbrushy. You get some of that kind of canvas texture here on the edges. Maybe bring our scale down a little bit here. Bring the border in a little bit more. This is just whatever you want to do with it, right? If you want to take it all the way like this and just make it kind of a slightly irregular, kind of noisy edge, you can do that. Or bring that scale up and make it super chunky, however you like to do it. Let me go ahead and just go back to where that was reset. I think that was actually pretty nice looking. So, all right, let's go ahead and take our long brush here, and we're going to bring this back in, and we're going to add this to our little composition here. So you might notice one pretty obvious problem we have here is that it's not the same shape as this cute little squiggle that we made, right?
Right.
Well, what about our old pal Puppet Pin here? I bet we could do some fun stuff right there. How about that? So you could, of course, find some other ways to distort this. You do whatever method you like, but I bet old Puppet Pin is probably going to do just fine here. And he's getting a little bendy right now, but let me show you a little trick right here. Come into Puppet Pin and open up this mesh. And each of these, by default, they're just position puppet pins, but if you set these to advanced, you're going to get some more options for how those can bend and warp things. And let's see, I bet that just setting these to advanced is going to be enough to get a nice smooth little wiggle right there. Okay, so in this case, what we're going to have to do is actually move our brush inside that composition. You might be able to do it with a transform effect here, but there's something that I want to do inside. So I'm going to make this composition be the place that this moves. So we could certainly open up our position and move this in here, but I want you to notice something that's not happening when I'm moving this position, and that's that my brush isn't evolving. So I made the long version of those images we were just working with, but I think we can do a little bit better than that, right? Let me undo a few times. Watch this. So if instead we add our old friend the transform effect, right? What if we add that before those roughen edges? So we're actually moving the layer before we're roughening it. So if I change the X position here, look at that right there. Look at that. Look at that. Yeah. Look how it evolves as it moves. Pretty great, huh? Let's go ahead and just reset that. Make ourselves a little keyframe right there. Go back to home and just push this all the way off to the side. All the way off right there. And now let's come back to that composition. Go ahead and set this to the old track matte. Look at that. Follows the path. And if we go through this, that brush is actually evolving every frame as it goes through there. So I think this is a pretty neat little trick. All you have to do is just make a long composition, whatever size you need it, and you're pretty well set up. So of course, this still has its limitations and depends on how exactly how stylized you want this to be, but it's a great start to using some effects to create something that can get you exactly what you need. You'll probably find some limits on the puppet tool. There are some other paid tools like Boa that can bend a long composition like this into almost any shape, but you just do whatever it is that your little heart desires here.
Wow, thanks for that, Klob. That was great. Thanks to Klob Hamross for bringing that to us.
You're struggling to stay in character yourself there, aren't you?
Well, I don't want to shock people out of their ASMR coma right now, so I'm trying to really modulate my voice down. Let's take it one step further. We have some extra things that we can do. So, if for example, those types of static brushes aren't to your liking, there are ways that we can actually simulate, we can recreate a whole universe of brushes inside of After Effects. It will be more machine intensive. So if you are trying to be kind to your computer, maybe this is not the answer for you, but we can use things like the Echo effect and CC Particle World, and we'll be creating our own simulated brushes totally procedurally inside of After Effects. So to start, you need to make a brush. So this is the first thing to do. So step one, just create a composition. It can be quite small. You would probably want this to be, say, 250, 200, just a teeny tiny little buddy brush over here. And you probably want its duration to be quite long. It needs to be generally as long as you want the brush to ever stick around. So it doesn't really matter. You could freeze frame it, but it gets simpler if you just don't. And then we just simply create a new, say we create a new solid in here. And then we're going to apply our old friend Fractal Noise. Fractal Noise comes to visit us every so often. You see them just hanging out in the garden.
I love my friend Fractal Noise. He's probably my favorite little friend. Just so good for everything. If you were looking at Rough and Edges, I was just using, sure looks a lot like our friend Fractal Noise there, doesn't it?
It's all made of math, right? It's all it's math all the way down. And here's a kind of real important thing is that whatever you make this brush, this is the same as you would see those various brush swatches that you would find in that you're going to find those like in Photoshop or in Illustrator or in Fresco. It's the same thing. This is the same type of image that you're trying to make, except we want to make it procedurally in here. And ideally, we're able to say, I've got one that I prepared earlier so that we can snap into that without me needing to rebuild it. I want to be pretty mindful of our time together here. So this starts with a solid that has a fractal noise on it. And then on top of that is an adjustment layer that is bringing on, the first thing is a shift channels. And the shift channels is going to take the alpha from the luminance. So if we have a look here, all we're really doing is saying anything that is bright, that's going to be opaque. Anything that is black, that's going to make holes. And then I add a curves onto this, and with the curves, I can be more, say, rough or forceful with some of the curve and outline of these things to help pinch in the boundaries a little bit. And then finally, I applied a gradient ramp over top of this, which is going to put dark colors on one side of the ramp and light colors on the other, as if you had if you had dipped your paint into something that is one color of paint at one end and one color of paint at the other. So if you were to take that big wide fan brush and you just push that into some paint, then you're going to load that brush up with, say, a little alizarin crimson on this side, but phthalo green on this side, and that'll create a blend across it as we use it later. So how do we then sort of deploy this type of thing elsewhere? So we would, this could be, again, we're making any kind of composition. We're going to say here, though, just 1920 by 1080, 30 frames a second. But if you need a different size, you go right ahead. And we're going to bring the brush out here. And we're just going to move it around like we would assume that brush would have moved in real life. So calling up its position, its scale, its rotation, all of those things. And we are going to just keyframe a little change and a move and maybe a shrink or a grow out of this thing. And it can go by pretty quickly as it goes. But this is sort of the journey that the brush went on as it moved across the page. And we're going to maybe use our convert vertex tool to make this a little bit of a squiggle, kind of like this.
I love that little motion path.
Yeah, it's, anything that you do, you can undo it. And we're not stuck with whatever we do. That's the great thing about After Effects. It's totally non-destructive. If you want to bend the path this way or that way, you can do that. But how are we going to see where this has gone? We want to see the path that it's traveled. So I put down an adjustment layer. And on top of that, I'm going to put the echo effect. The echo effect right on top of that is going to create copies of what happened in the past. Now, some people have a hard time escaping their past, but not me.
Got to embrace it. That's what made us what we are today, Evan.
Right, that's true. Thank you. This will be good therapy for me. And you can see as I add more and more echoes, this looks exactly the same as if you were to have something with not particularly tight spacing, right? This is what those brushes look like. And if further, I'm just going to bring our opacity down of the thing, and now we're starting to see them blend into each other. And we can change how those blend. Right now they're on add, but we can do composite in front or composite in back. And it's like one of the edges of the brush is painting over the other as it twists through the canvas here. Now the trick is, if we want this to be a complete stroke, we need enough copies of this to go all the way back to the first frame. And if we want to increase the spacing, we need to bring this echo time down. So I'm going to go ahead and let's just say divide this by 5. And look how much tighter that's getting down here. But we need even more copies. So this can, like I said, become very machine intensive to produce this. But depending on the look you're after, you will simply need to pre-render this off so that it doesn't bog down your machine. But now we've produced this beautiful ribbon going through. And on top of this, we could style this up with even more things. But the first thing I would suggest you do is actually pre-render this off and then bring it back in and then start making even more adjustments to this ribbon if that's something that you wanted to do. Generally, on top of this, you'll probably want to do a blur of some kind, which can be helpful if you're finding you have a lot of large gaps because you're trying to reduce the number of echoes for performance reasons. Just a 3 pixels of blurriness will be enough to smooth a lot of that out. And then, because obviously we're not just using titanium white here, we want to bring some more colors, all the colors of the rainbow to this.
Have a little cad yellow over there, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. And let's bring Colorama out. And importantly on here, I'm going to recommend that you come down to modify and you uncheck modify alpha so you can maintain those soft alpha boundaries elsewhere. But this is where your input phase is coming from intensity, those black and white values, and the output cycle can be whatever you'd like. So maybe we just want to have these sort of 3 colors that run through. It can be helpful if you pinch 2 of these together up at the top like that. And now we have this sort of a movement throughout the thing. That could be the way you want to go. But again, you make this however you like. These are whatever colors you choose them to be. Yeah, there you go. You've got an artificial brush stroke coming on. So like I say, probably pre-render this, but what I've done here is I've encapsulated the movement of this thing into its own pre-comp, and then that being deployed in use out in the world is where we have the tritone happening to it. On top of that, I've placed a bevel alpha to make it seem a little bit more three-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
A second bevel alpha that is getting a lot tighter so that it seems like a buildup of acrylic paint out there, and then maybe a drop shadow behind it. And that can... Actually, I think I've just ripped off the Intel Inside logo doing this, but that's fine. No one can...
You just made it your own, Evan. That's okay.
Yeah, that's true. I was inspired by the nature of consumerism. Anyway, I'm trying not to be cynical today because we have a guest on the show. So, but yeah, this is one way that we can make this kind of a custom brush. I have a second way if you'd like to see it there, Klob.
I would love to see it. I think that was just fantastic. And while it is a little bit machine intensive, I think that would let you do, all kinds of neat stuff.
Yeah, and we can see, your little friend Eskar, Oscar the snail here.
Mm-hmm.
We've got
Love that little guy.
Yeah, he's telling us that the echo brush layer takes 1.7 seconds to render one frame. So that is a little bit intensive.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, let's go to another...
Some of those fun little particles of yours, right?
Oh yes, if you ever need to put 1,000 of something into the frame, this is the way to do it. So this is actually... We're going back to our roots on this one. This is an Andrew Kramer type of special here. And what we're using is the particle generator, CC Particle World, to spray these little sprites out into the world, right? Like spray paint, if you would, which of course is a technology that's it's full of CFCs, so you probably don't enjoy that as much as it.
Oh, but you could use your own. You could even have human-powered spray paint if you want.
Right.
You don't have to use the stuff in the can.
You strike me as someone who has an airbrushed van, so I'm going to assume that that's pretty normal. So how do we produce the same type of thing using the CC Particle World? So I might as well start this over from scratch. And this is going to be 30 frames a second. And let's see. Let's go ahead. Again, we need a new solid to hold our particles. Maybe I'll make it a white solid like this, and we'll just have CC Particle World.
A whole little world full of particles?
That's right. A whole
Look
world full of particles. And out here, what we need to do is basically move the producer as it showers the world in particles. So first off, let me go ahead and take our physics. We don't want any explosion happening. We don't want any gravity happening. We just want to be shooting out particles at the place where it is.
This is one of those older, you see this a lot in the simulation plugins, but you add the effect and it's got sort of a weird look at first because they're kind of these older defaults from the days of when computers were slower and they just haven't been updated ever since.
Well, yeah, and these type of Tron-like effects out here are fun and nice. But now we just have a single particle over top of itself out there in the world. So that's because the pen isn't moving, which is too bad. I'd like to control this using a null, but you'll notice that the position XYZ doesn't really map particularly to the position of the world. So I'll start by simply making this null three-dimensional, which will give us 1, 2, 3 positions, and then I can try to map those to these 1, 2, 3 positions. And those, if we come in here, we need a special little bit of code to link those together. So I'm going to copy and paste these real quick, and then we'll explain what we're looking at as we observe them. So let's see, this is position Y. Position Y, and then we'll come into position Z. Like that, and I've got some errs going on, and that is because they don't have the right name.
You can choose whatever little name you like, but your expressions are going to get a little upset with you.
Right. They want a real specific type of name. So now if I keyframe the position of this changing over time, you see that little trail that is coming out behind it, right? And that is being caused by emitting particles that simply hang out in the world where they've been left. That's where they've been sprayed out into the world. And yeah, there's no gravity, there's no velocity, there's nothing really going on here. But this is what will control where the particles are. And we can control it exactly the same way as we control anything with position. This is also three-dimensional, so if you want to see it from different angles, you can do that. We won't be. We're only going to be using the two-dimensionalness of this, because that's probably enough for us. But the big thing is, I can't see all of the brush strokes. We'll just increase the longevity of this thing, and now suddenly you've got a much longer trail. And as long as the longevity in seconds is as long or longer than it takes to go between the 2 points, you're going to end up with particles all along the path. So far, so good, right? This is so far so great. But it's not brush, right? It not brush. So I'm going to bring our brush sprite that we had before back out here, and I'm going to ask our brush layer here, our particle, come into the particle, and we say not a line, but instead give me a textured square. Choose the texture. The texture is the brush. And you're going to see a whole bunch of little brushes going through there. Look at all these tiny brushes.
We talked about sprites before and how it would be nice if the brush tool had those, but here you are.
Yep, we sprited it up. Refreshing. So you will likely need to adjust the birth size. So if I bring the birth and death size up to 1, you see this is now full size of the thing. The other bit of business that's a little crazy is that it's been like you've stabbed your brush into the into the front of this thing. So what you might want to do is actually make sure your keyframes start up like this, and you can see it starting to paint down like that. So how are we going to sort of massage this to be exactly like we want? Well, the trick is, first off, let's get our opacity map exactly how we want. So this is from birth to death, how opacity will be working. And let's see, where do we have... my pen tool is not clicking in the UI. But first, let's set our maximum opacity up to 100 so that it gets super dark. And let's see, we need to... Oh, why is that not... Oh, maybe it's because this isn't in the interface. Klob. Oh, you have to go to your selection tool in order to make that happen. So there, now it is from birth to death, totally opaque. If you wanted this to sort of fade as it goes, you might do something like this. So now the later brushes are fading off, but let's not worry about that for now. And we want to kind of take a lot of the variety out of this. So if our size variation goes down to 0, you can see that this turns into a lot more of a rigid brush. If we add an amount of size variation, even just 5%, it starts to get a little bit fuzzy as each sprite is different from its neighbor. If you bring your max opacity down to something like 60, right, then things are blending into each other more. We could bring that down even more to 50 or something, like you get that kind of blending. And color-wise, we can do the same thing. I'm just going to say origin constant, which is going to use its original color. And again, we would use Colorama or other things to colorize this however we want. One particular caveat that I want to bring to mind for people, if we make this go very, very fast, like super fast, the faster it goes, the less smooth it becomes.
Yeah.
And if you want things to be smooth and have that in-between interpolation, you will most likely need to, first off, you'll probably have to purge your cache. You'll just have to purge the devil right out of there.
Yeah.
So I'll just go ahead and purge that cache. And then I'll make the cache purging noise. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. And Ray is asking, this is actually the old M1 Ultra. So this is the first of the M series right here. But after that purge, you can see how this is not a smooth line anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's jagged. So that's because the particle system is only updating on every frame. So if you want something smoother, you simply need to come into your composition settings and say, let's just bump this up to like 60, and you see it got smoother already.
I see our friend Anda is suggesting that you could just make it longer and time remap that.
Exactly. So if that's where you're at, you could be doing things that way. If you are happier to mess with the frame rate, I would recommend probably a combination of both. Just because if you have the frame rate that's higher, you're at least dealing in seconds, and if you have some really precise timing that you need to take care of, then you would probably. Oh, sorry, I'm so full of burps. I've been holding in chuckles all day on this stream, so that's been a rough one. But there we go. And you can kind of see how this like this right now looks kind of like pastel chalk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you tighten it up, it starts to look more like paint. We can still apply things like adjustment layers over top of this. But one thing that's a little bit simplistic to kind of do, at least in this context, is to just use it as a matte. So we're using the particles themselves to reveal a totally different layer underneath. And that is, you're still getting that globby, chunky amount to this. You can control it along a path that aligns with how you would want these letters to be written on. But because it's revealing something, we don't really care that much about the actual content and texture of that. So I know we're 40 minutes into the program here. We've got a couple more things that we want to try to show you. So we're gonna shut this bad boy down. And Klob, we're gonna go back to your screen real quick.
Yeah. Honestly, I think we probably have plenty of time for this and any other little questions that they might have today.
Well, we'll find out. It really depends. Our presentation is a little bit more laconic today, so we never know how long it'll take.
That's so true.
Yeah. So what else have you brought us to observe here?
Well, Evan, I feel like we've spent a lot of time and effort today kind of figuring out ways to make to fake brushes in After Effects, right?
Yeah, and it's obviously you being a much more naturalistic type person that might not jive well.
So, maybe instead of spending all this time kind of fighting against the software, you could use something that has brushes built right into it already. So, of course, you could be doing this in Photoshop too. I think having a tablet is a big part of this. You're seeing my iPad right now, and I'm in our old friend Adobe Fresco, which is built specifically for drawing and painting, very heavy on the painting. I do want to make sure I wash out my brush before I dip into this other program. So let me just dip that and, purge the devil out of it there.
I'm gonna warn people to not do that with their stylus for their Wacom tablets. Yeah. You'll destroy them.
I was very careful. This is actually a cup of water that I've been drinking out of, but I was very careful just to touch on the top here.
Okay. He's been drinking paint all episode.
That would explain so much. So if you haven't used Adobe Fresco before, it's just a delightful little program that you can use to draw and paint whatever you like. And Evan, did you know that you can actually use Fresco for free?
Oh, well, free is good. We like saving people money.
Yeah. I do think there are some features that are locked behind the pay tier, but before I get into even what I'm going to do here, let's just pick, there we go, a little watercolor brush, and watch this right there. You see it spreading a little bit, and then it flows into another. Let's go ahead and push that up a little bit more. Look at that right there. So you can do watercolor and oil painting right in here, and you can get some, fairly natural results. Obviously, we're streaming here. I don't know what kind of stuff you're going to get. Just to mess around here for a second, I'm going to turn the water all the way up and the color all the way down, and just brush some water over the edges of this, and look at that.
It's that wet on wet technique you keep talking about.
Fun stuff, right? So, but you know what? We don't need that. Let's go ahead and just clear that layer, because what we're doing is using Fresco here as just another way to create those reveals that we've been working on in this episode. So I'm going to tap. Looks like you can't quite see it, but up here at the very top brush icon, you have pixel brushes, and you have all kinds of fun little stuff in here. let's get out of the basic. We can go basic, but I think we want something a little more exciting today. You know what? Just to show it, since you were showing some fun multicolor stuff, you can actually do a lot of that right here in Fresco. And so if you wanted to paint with some crazy thing like this, you could, paint like that. Look at that. Look at that. Get some cheese doodles right there. And you could paint with them right here in Fresco and write your name or whatever fun stuff you want to do there.
I have been getting really into making churros, so that is actually 100%.
So I'm going to dip into this painting menu right here, and then let's just choose something a little kind of bigger and chunkier. There's one down here called the Roughen brush, and I think that's kind of fun. Let's see how, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and set this back to just black, because you know what, if we're using this as a matte, what we need is the maximum amount of contrast here. And so I think that's a little too big, but looks pretty cool, doesn't it? Let's shrink that back down to find something kind of a reasonable size here. That's pretty good. All right. And so I've actually been using this a lot lately. Anytime that you need little arrows or little doodads here, just come in here, make them in Fresco, and just record your screen. It's right there. You can use an app, but it's right there built into your iPad. And you could just then just record yourself doing that 5 or 10 times. And then you could just bring that into After Effects and use that, recolor it however you want. But that's going to give you, look at that beautiful, natural little flow of the brush and just how random and fun those are. There's no way you're ever going to recreate that with even some of the cool stuff that we've been doing, right?
True.
So, you might ask, well, if we're using these for reveals, we need to kind of have an idea of what you're revealing, right? Well, we'll bring this back to After Effects in a minute, but I want to just show you a little trick here. So you can bring images right in here into Fresco, and just in case you didn't know, you can animate stuff right here in Fresco as well. So if any of this seems fun and you want to do some frame-by-frame animation right in here, you just go right on ahead. So I've got this fancy little logo right here, and I'm going to take this little sucker, just turn this opacity down to like 2%. Can you even still see that on the stream? Yeah, just barely. All right. And then on my clear layer, I'm going to take that big chunky brush, and then I would just record myself just coloring that guy in, right? Maybe turn that brush up just a little bit bigger. And then again, just do that 5 or 6, 7 times, maybe from different angles, different speeds. Just try all kinds of fun little stuff there, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously I'm doing this as a stream right now, but I would just be recording myself doing that right now. And just do as much of that as you like. And, just whatever variations. And you could do this. I've done this for text many times. This is a great way to give yourself a very natural text reveal. And obviously, right now that's pretty messy. But if you were doing this over some editable text that you brought in here and set really low opacity, then you just gave yourself this very cool natural reveal. So,
and while you're working on that, I know there is a question in the chat. What if we had to only do this in Photoshop? Well, the big thing that you're missing is just the screen recording component. So you would probably fire up something like OBS and record your screen in there, and then you would take the result of that. Just make sure when you're dialing in your screen recorder. Now, I'd love to do that, but I'm already recording too many things and streaming stuff.
Yeah.
So it'd be difficult for us to also show the recording. But just make sure that you've got your frames per second turned quite high, and that'll give you a lot more temporal fidelity. That's a fun word, but it just means that you have enough frames to play with. If you want to go from 120 down to 12 down to 8, you've got them, right? You've got this stuff. But it's the same thing. So just you'll be painting and drawing away in Photoshop, and you'll be recording with OBS. And that's pretty much it.
And yes, to answer the question I was just seeing there, I was using an iPad and an Apple Pencil. It's the regular iPad, not a Pro, anything like that. But really, you could be doing this on a phone with your finger. pretty much any device and any app that lets you draw or paint, you could do this if you have a way to record it. I would just really emphasize you want to either do black on white or white on black, and that way you get the most contrast possible. Now I'm just going to get my brush all cleaned up again here, and we're going to come back and hey, look at that. I've got one of these recordings that I made in Fresco right here in After Effects. And of course, I took this into Premiere to find the right time, because After Effects is not a video editing app, despite the many things that it does very well. And I have already done a little bit of time remapping, because that takes a little longer than, isn't that funny? Time remapping takes a little longer than we want. But all we're going to do right here is we're just going to come in here and find the effect. I believe it's under Channel. Where is it? I forget where it is. Extract. You can search for that yourself. So extract is a great effect if you need just the blacks or just the whites. Let's go ahead and come up here a little bit. Hey, looky there. It's that same stuff I was just doing, right? And I'm just going to crush those whites right out of there. Now, if I were using this for, say, an arrow or something, I would take the time to mask off that interface, but I don't even need to do that right now because, of course, I'm just using this as a matte again. So in this case, I'm going to use it for that triangle, which you could see back there very lightly in the clip originally. So that triangle is just going to use that as a matte. And hey, looky there. There's that great little reveal. And so we'll just make our little logo right there. And if you want, make that faster, just play around with those time remapping keyframes, which we can talk about some other week if you need to know more about those. But you can make all kinds of fun stuff like this. And again, if you have, you do it 5 or 6 times, you have as many options as you want. And just go through and see which one you like. Maybe combine 2 of them coming from different sides. That could be fun. And, I was showing you all those fun little arrows and stuff. And hey, look at that. I got another one right there. See that this is the exact same thing. I just masked off the Fresco interface here. Let's go ahead and just show them. Oh, there we go. There's that Fresco interface. Let's go ahead and just bring that back. And I've just got a little fill effect. I think it's just a fun little arrow just writing on, just like that. And look how easy that was. Obviously, this isn't going to work for everything, and you are kind of limited by the screen resolution on your device. But if you're looking for something that's much more natural, you don't have to spend all this time kind of faking the brushes and all that. Just take advantage of all these great brushes that already exist over here in your friend Fresco or Photoshop or whatever app your little heart desires.
Yeah, and as our buddy Joel's pointing out over the chat, we could use the Luma matte if you want.
Absolutely.
So doing black and white will give you Luma options. If you do fancy things in color, right, then you'll be able to use the white of the canvas to break things out pretty easily, depending on how you're blending with it. The extract effect can be a little bit harsh, but you can feather it towards the edges of your selection. So you've got options, or you just drop them down as like additive layers or multiplied layers, and they'll sort themselves out in terms of keeping black or white pixels.
Since we didn't show Luma mattes, I'll just show that real quick.
Right.
It's just this little switch right here. By default, you get an alpha matte, but if you click that right there, now it's a Luma matte, and it's going to use the white and black values to reveal this thing. Let's go ahead and shut that guy off. But right now, so the white is what shows and the black is what goes away. So we need to invert that by clicking this little switch. And now we've got the white or the black as what shows up, and the white is transparent. So same result, different route.
So yeah, there we go. That is what? That's like 5 different ways to paint things on in After Effects. I hope that was a good pile of stuff. So hopefully this.
I think we timed this pretty well, Evan.
Yeah, exactly. We're trying to get out of here before I get cut off again by the ending of the hard out on this stuff. So, Klob, thanks for being with us. Like I say, we are going to be covering more painting-based stuff in a future episode, but we are going to be focusing more on paint-over type techniques. So that's what's going to be coming up in a couple of weeks. But we are back at you every week. I think Kyle might be back.
Except next week.
Right, yeah, sure. Most Mondays, not next one, but 2 months. It's not important. follow us on social media. Follow me at EC Abrams. You can follow Klob over there at Kylosaurus Rex. But if you have questions,
OceanDesignHotline.com.
Right, a real website for real people. If you want the sort of work files for some of this stuff, we'll be posting up some of those after the show. So we'll figure out making those palatable for consumption. And watch out for cut downs of the episodes. Make sure that you are subscribed to Adobe Live on all of its various platforms. But yeah, come at us with your questions. We want to turn them alchemy-like into this show as we pack it.
Whatever this thing becomes.
We turn your questions into this. So you're welcome, I guess. / it's your fault. But yes, that's the show. Anything else, Kyle, while you're here?
Well, happy After Effectsing from all of us here. Happy After Effectsing and Adobe bless.
Okay, well, we're going to leave that as the sign off. Bye for now, everyone.